I love watching football content, and there's one creator who I'll put on the screen now who makes a great video series on the most dangerous versions of footballers in history. Watching football and playing FIFA, you'll never forget certain special types of players who used to cause absolute havoc whenever they played your team. My real FIFA players will remember Ben Yedder, in form at Monaco. Oh my gosh. There was like a 3-4 year period where he used to just cause havoc. And then there was guys like Blonde Aguero in real life in 2018-19 who gave Chelsea a hat-trick. I'll never forget that game, man. He was just on smoke, on absolute smoke. These footballers will forever be in the memory of the people who had the privilege of watching them at the peak of their powers. So when thinking of making a video, I thought, what are the most dangerous version of rappers? Rappers who at the time felt like they couldn't miss. Let's take a trip. Figure out some of the most dangerous version of rappers and leave in the comments below the most unstoppable versions of artists you like. Wired Earphone Loski, different kettle of fish. In my Digger D video, I said Loski was the Mbappe of UK drill, and in 2016-17, he was Mbappe at Monaco. If I had to describe him in 3 words, I would say raw, unfiltered, generational. In 2016, the most valuable place for music was SoundCloud. Leaked songs, remixes could be found there, and this is how I listened to Loski. At the time I was in secondary school and Spotify was too expensive for me. So if the song goes on SoundCloud, most of the time I listen to it way more, or if it's on TubeBuddy then I'll just stream it there as well. SoundCloud became the hub for underground artists. Now everyone knows that 6-7 and 150 were the originators of UK drill, so all eyes were on Lambeth at that point. Anything that was even close to their beef was growing in popularity at a rapid rate. So in light of 6-7 success, where fans were looking for new artists, they were less likely to go to a blog page or someone to break down what this person did at this point like Trap Lord Russ does. It was more so street gossip that gave people their name. And out of the gate, Loski had so much controversy around his name. During the 2015-16 time, the narrative was, he's from the other side, 150. He's being seen in music videos with his ops when he was much younger. Now, the aim of drill is to prove you're winning the beef and to make your ops look as bad as possible. It was a genre built on diss tracks and response tracks, and Loski could do those things at the highest degree. And I'm not saying Loski was the first person to bring up the dead in a drill song, but when he did it, it felt like it was a big moment, and it felt like there was actual consequences to what he was doing. Listening to songs like Bands and Violence or Ghost featuring Taze and Oh Boy, in terms of raw talent, other than maybe Shoki, Loski was in a league of his own. And I thought he could take drill to levels that had never been seen before. Then I heard 2 songs from him, DJ Khaled and Hazards, which in my opinion are 2 songs that can arguably be in the top 5 drill songs of all time. This was it. He was finally gaining momentum and he did the impossible, getting 1 million views, which in the UK at that time was an accomplishment for even superstars. Loski had a chance to stamp his name as one of the greatest drill artists of all time. Unfortunately, he went to prison. Now, it's weird because this almost became a fortunate part of his career where on his second stint out of prison, he went crazy. But I felt as though as he was locked up, his name and notoriety grew as those songs grew as well. I was listening to those songs nearly every single day while he was locked up in prison, and the anticipation for when he came out was high. I mean, he didn't have like a crazy catalogue before then, but you could see that his talent was there, and it was just exciting to see what he could drop next. And I would argue, other than maybe Reeks and B, people were extremely anticipating the release of Loski in 2017. Also, with the help of his collective also making major moves and dropping some classic songs, Loski was at a point where when he was released, it was just cash money for whatever he did. As long as it was a decent song, he was good. And then his first song out of prison, Teddy Brockshot, grew into a classic song in 2017. And every moment he created, it felt like the streets were just loving it. With the dances, to the bars. He then drops his iconic Tim Westwood freestyle. And I have a Tim Westwood video coming out in the next couple of weeks, which I'll discuss his involvement later in the scene. But that Loski Tim Westwood for me is a top 5 Tim Westwood freestyle ever to drop. You can include the grime and everything. I'll never forget when that dropped, man. In fact, that freestyle was so good that multiple lines and snippets that were around that freestyle ended up becoming songs like Money and Beef, and it got to the point where even before Money and Beef dropped, I already knew like half of the song. And how could I speak about iconic moments from Loski and not mention his iconic freestyle at the Mobos? We're talking about guys like 6-7 in their prime, K-Trap, Youngs Tef, and he's out-rapping everyone with his wired earphones. It felt like anything he did at that time with his wired earphones was just gonna be a classic. He then switches genres and drops Forrest Gump, a smash hit in the streets, and I think it went triple platinum himself. He also had the song which leaked with Biss called Niger Man, ended up being a song with Davido which went crazy. Loski's impact on drill was genuinely insane for how short it was, and to this day I'm still figuring out the unit of measurement of what one shankar dash is. Or when I'm alone, I'm in my room, I'm just wondering like, how can a girl be rude and dead? Loski had all eyes on him during that period, and it led to him receiving a co-sign from the hottest rapper on the planet in Drake, and having Drake fan out with him at his shows. You'd think Drake was just a fan at that show, but no. Loski was the one who was carrying the torch and ended up cementing himself as a legend in drill at such a very, very young age. I've already made a video discussing Skepta in 1617 and how he pretty much took over the scene, winning a Mercury Prize for his iconic album, Konnichiwa, and shut down, becoming an instant UK classic. But to save time recapping a now deleted video, I'm just going to play a snippet of the insanity which was 1617 Skepta. When Chip was on an absolute frenzy and just barring anybody and everybody, right? I heard so many diss tracks that year, it was ridiculous. I mean, the year before we had just come off Meek Mill and Drake. Everyone was just dissing, and now Chip's just going on a war path. You know what Drake said it's a 20v1? Chip created a 20v1 and somehow came out of that unscathed. And some of the best diss tracks that have come out of this country came out of that beef. But there was one song in particular which started a beef that led to me becoming a Skepta fan. Now, the song was Pepper Rhythm, and in that song, Chip mentions two artists, Skepta and Devilman. Now, when he mentions these artists, as one does, they both respond. But the responses were very interesting. So now, Devilman responded to Chip, and he then dissed Chip. And this, I listened back to it in doing research for this video, and it was a very, very, very good diss. Like, I don't listen to Devilman like that. Well, first of all, because of that name. That name is wild. Do you think I'm going to be listening to a man like Devilman? No. So I was listening to him, and the bars he was sending that shit were just, it was entertaining, it was funny, it was a quality song. I was like, oh, I don't know Devilman had it in his locker. I see why these guys were even beefing with him in the first place, right? He was coming at Chip for the whole, you come back to grind when you're washed, not when you're at your peak of your powers. He was just sending for him with funny little bars. And then he said one bar about sperming on him, and I was like, whoa. But anyway, I kept listening to the song, And then I re-listened to Nasty. Now, I shouldn't even say nasty, I should say nasty, because what Skepta did on that track was second to none. Skepta did two iconic things. Now, first of all, when I hear one my long song, then song, jong song, son, you're not ready. You see how I butchered that? The fact that he was able to incorporate that into his verse, crazy. And the fact that, I remember being in school and everyone was just talking about it, and it was like, this moment was like, oh my God. None of us spoke a word of Cantonese, but the fact that he put that in his bars was just crazy to us. And then I think the most important line, looking back on it, I was like, this is a very valid line. Going back to that sperming on him thing, where he said, thought it was a clash, all of a sudden you want a sperm on man. And that's one of my favorite things about a diss track. Pause, I guess. That was wild. But what he said, that's one of my favorite things about a diss track, is when you're able to change the perspective of the audience, right? Because let's say, for example, you thought that Devilman diss was the best, he's cleared Chip out of the room. Hearing that, it makes you think, it's true, like, why do you want to do that on a man? Like, first of all, he said he wants to punch him up, cool, whatever. Then he wants to fight him, and then he wants to do what on him? And then playing off that and creating a narrative is one of my favorite things someone can do in a diss track. And we're going to speak about the Kendrick and Drake one at some point. But I don't know, I feel like it's too fresh. There's still things going on. I feel like maybe when Drake releases his next album and it's a rap album, maybe I'll speak about it, but right now it's a bit saturated on the YouTube streets. But anyway, one of my favorite people to ever do this whole changing your perspective on a diss was Jadakiss. You see how I did the 9. But yeah, he did that when he was dissing 50 Cent on Checkmate. And what he said is that how can you get shot 9 times and not want to shoot back? Now, if you're involved in the street stuff and you know the street politics in New York, you probably have heard stories about what happened to the shooters of 50 Cent, right? But when he said that in the song, I was like, it's true, like, it makes you re-look at many men in the way where 50 Cent's the victim in that story, but 50 Cent's been able to paint the narrative that he's the winner. He's able to be proud that God's given him a second chance. And I thought that was very interesting from Jadakiss. So Skepta's beefed with Devilman. Everyone's going crazy about the diss. And then he drops Konnichiwa in May. So this beef stuff happened in March. He dropped it in May. Now, I'll never forget, I was doing my GCSEs. I was in year 10, so I was probably doing RE and science, core science. Then I did double in year 11. I'll never forget, I was in science, and I just started rapping some random bars as you do. And then one of my friends started rapping like the rest of it. And I won't say they weren't into rap, but like I just listened to anything and everything, innit? So I wasn't expecting them to know the bar. So when they did, I was like, oh no, this Skepta album is gonna be massive. And it was. I think anyone who's lived in the UK and was around that time remembers how much Shutdown was played. I'm talking commercials, adverts, everything, every way people could use that song, they were. The beat, the actual bars. And again, we've got to go back to 2016, right? I know it's a bit cliche, 2016, you guys, have you made no memory since? But that year was just crazy. I'm talking, Drake was at the peak of his powers. When I say the peak of his powers, I don't think people understand. The man sold 1 million first week. Eminem has done that. Lil Wayne has done that. And that's about it. And Drake's done that. So Drake's on fire. He's coming off 2 projects. If you're reading this, is too late. And What a Time to Be Alive. 2 of the biggest moments. He's beat Meek Mill in a battle. The guy is on absolute flames. Like, honestly, people, especially the fact that he beat Meek Mill and then he got exposed for ghostwriting and people still embraced him, I genuinely, that guy was Teflon at that period, right? And then he's coming to the UK and he's just popping out random events. He's popping out at Section Boys, he's popping out at Loski shows. I mean, the guy's just all around the place, right? And he's showing Skepta mad love. I mean, the guy's got a BBK tattoo, which is a bit crazy, but he's got a BBK tattoo. The guy was on fire and he was showing Skepta love. And then he's obviously on Shutdown. And the fact that he's on Shutdown is crazy. Because this is, again, in terms of the memification of Drake, I think one of his greatest marketing tools is the fact that he's such a meme. Like, even who remembers the meme from Hotline Bling where he's doing the dance? Like, that went crazy. What else? The guy was just a meme. Anything he did, the whole trust me, daddy, all that stuff, he went crazy, right? So he's putting his back in. And I feel like the UK never had as many eyes as they did until that exact period. I feel like, especially with the streaming era, I felt as though people across the world were able to discover Skepta. I mean, if you see his Noisy documentary where he's in America, you think that he's at like Shoreditch or something, the way everyone knows the word, everyone's vibing out, everyone's singing the lyrics. The UK was at the point where we've been yearning, like we knew we were cold at rapping, but we were yearning for someone to bridge the gap, get us into that market and, get us paid more. Because yes, people are doing the O2 now and see it as like this normal thing, but back then, it wasn't like, you definitely had to be like Michael Jackson or some of these massive artists to be selling out certain arenas, doing certain shows. So Skepta is now seen as one of the faces of this country, right? He's being platformed in a way where if we had to like pick a champion, we were choosing him. Now, I'm going to start getting into my Konnichiwa retrospective because that for me was the first Skepta album where I was like, okay, I'm a fan now. I get the hype, I understand it, because for me, as someone who's not the biggest Grime fan, that album transcended Grime. That album, Konnichiwa not only transcended Grime, but it transcended UK rap in general. I think that album for me is guaranteed top 5 albums to come out of this country. But anyway, let's get into talking about the album. So he had a bunch of tracks on there, and again, go back to the American side of things, right? He had a track with A$AP Nast. He had a track with Pharrell Williams, which was a surprise feature. I remember re-listening to it a couple months ago. And I was like, oh yeah, Pharrell's on this. Crazy. Because his name isn't listed on Spotify. So I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh, Yeah, this guy has Pharrell Williams just on his album casually, like. So the guy's got UK grime legends. He had a young and up-and-coming novelist on the album. He had Wiley on the album. Bunch of guys, right? Bunch of guys. But I think my favorite person he had featured on the album was Chip. Now, when I say he had Chip featured on the album, I know you're thinking, what do you mean Chip wasn't on the album? There is a song called Corn on the Curb where Skepta is going back and forth with Wiley. Very good song. But at the end of the song, it's a phone call with him and Chip. Now, what makes this amazing is, if you think back to what I said earlier with Chip mentioning Skepta's name in Pepper Rhythm, him and Devilman beefing, you then get to a song like Corn on the Curb, where he's wondering like, bro, why are you mentioning my name? And Chip actually answers that, right? He mentioned his name because he admires Skepta. He thinks, no, like, I grew up listening to you. You are one of our legends, right? And Skepta then breaks down how he's feeling. And this is like very much a brother-to-brother moment where Skepta's telling him about how he can't be on the roads, he can't be with the man them because he's a superstar. But at the same time, he gets into these corporate spaces and he feels uncomfortable. He doesn't feel like he belongs there, right? A classic case of imposter syndrome that we know today. But hearing him say that back then, especially someone who everyone reveres and says is the guy, was very interesting to me, because you hear someone like Kendrick Lamar say on The Heart Part 3 that he almost wanted to unalive himself when all that pressure of being compared to Tupac and being the face of LA was on him. So to hear Skepta say things like that, I can tell it's a very heavy crown to wear. So especially, it's a heavy crown to wear because he has to be the face of not only London, because sometimes we say the UK, we just mean London. He has to be the face of Manny, London, Birmingham, all these different places, right? And Chip just does the right thing in that situation. He tells him, nah, you've got a calling from God. You were meant to do this. You're meant to bridge the gap. You're meant to be the face and our champion, right? And you've got the ability to do it, so just go for it and do it. And I think that was one of my favorite moments on the album, looking back recently, because it was like, no, that's something, that's real. Like, you've got to just kill that doubt in your brother's mind, because you know that he's the coldest and you've got to champion him as such. Some of my other favorite tracks on the album is a song called Text You Back. It's a girl song where he speaks about how he doesn't really want to hurt the person he's with, but he's busy and he's on the roads and whatever. And I really like that song, mainly because of the sample and the instrumental for that song. It's very creative, and I like that type of grime as well. So Skepta's done all these things. Obviously, there's the classic in That's Not Me, where anytime I hear those bars, like a chip is implanted in my brain. Like, you know when, I don't know if you guys see the new Captain America movie. Let me know what you guys think of it, because, yeah, that movie was not good. I watched it on streaming, and as an MCU fan, let's just say I was disappointed. But anyway, I was watching that film where, you know, when they just like whisper a word and then the person activates and they become like this sleeper agent, right? Whenever I hear That's Not Me, that's what happens to me. My brain just goes, I just start rapping it. Act like a waste man, let me stop. But yeah, he did all of that. He's achieved all of these things. Now, unlike Loski and Skepta, who had built positive momentum, Youngs Teflon was in a different situation. Youngs Teflon was coming off his Call of Duty 3 tape, which featured the classic songs with Dave and himself, and they were going bar for bar, and everyone loved it. However, other than the song, it felt like the tape was a step in the wrong direction for Tef. It felt like he wasn't improving necessarily, and he was at a key point in his career where he was older than most of the young rappers at the time, and he could have faded into that, yeah, you're an OG who respects your past work, but we don't really listen to you right now. So going into the 2020s, Tef was at an interesting junction in his career, as his next move could either have him viewed as an OG or viewed as a current artist who could still compete with everyone. He then drops the Crocodile T freestyle. This was a freestyle I really enjoyed, and one of the reasons I really enjoyed it is because, you know, at the time I was a crypto bro, and XRP was up. He had a bar by XRP. I was like, yeah, man, this is what I'm related to. I rock with this bar. And overall, it was just a good freestyle to get his name hot again. And this got me interested into what he would drop next. He then drops one of my favorite bodies of work from him in All Eyes on Me Against the World, a title I wasn't the biggest fan of at the time. I felt it was a bit clunky, but it was obviously a Tupac reference, and Yeah, in my opinion, that tape by Tef is the perfect blend of him pushing himself and trying different styles, but also rapping at an elite level. I mean, the intro song, Plato, starts the album off with an amazing saxophone sample, and it's Tef just doing what Tef does best. 3 minutes of straight bars. My favorite bar from the song was, I came from higher learning, call me Plato. Very simple, but at the time I was at uni, higher learning, just resonated with me, you know? For me, the album was the perfect blend of wanting a rapper to get out of their comfort zone whilst also giving us what we know. With Circle featuring Rams, a really enjoyable song, and a song that I didn't expect to like, as I'd taken Rams out of my music rotation a while before that. They had an upbeat song like Body Language with Stardom, which is a really good song. Stay Dangerous, where he sings on the hook, something I'm not usually the biggest fan of with him, but I enjoyed the song, and he's recently released Stay Dangerous Part 2 this year, which was an amazing song and one of my songs of the year. And a fun fact, Blade Brown also released another song where he was featured on it with K-Trap called La Costa Nostra. And if I had to pick between which one was better out of the two, I'm taking the one with Youngs Teflon, man. I think the vibe and the lyrical ability was just higher, and I feel like they were more so sparring with each other rather than just making a good song. Another fun fact is the first concert I ever attended was Youngs Teflon's All Eyes on Me Against the World concert. And man, that concert was worth every single penny. This guy brought out the Hood Avengers. I'm talking 6'7", Rimsey, Rams. He even brought out K-Trap and Blade Brown. The best £20 I've ever spent in life. I'm talking, I lost my voice at the end of that concert. I'm going to put some clips throughout, but yeah, he went crazy. And then I saw him again as a surprise guest at Silla's Block Report live show. And yeah, that year I just felt like he was just unstoppable. And I feel as though it was the perfect album to age gracefully into that OG but still got bars phase, where now he's featured on songs like Four of Us, where people are like, yeah, he's got the best verse, because he had that period in between where he was reintroduced to a younger fan base. He then drops part 2 of All Eyes on Me Against the World, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I think part 1 was better. It had some good songs like Hustlers Don't Die, part 6. My favourite from the series, funny enough, Barcode's remix with a big moment with Giggs featuring on, and Magnum, which I really enjoyed to this day. And overall, it was a solid body of work, but I wouldn't say it's my favourite, and I have such a connection to it as I do for part 1. Even though in the UK this might not be considered a common opinion that Youngs Teflon was on fire that year, for me as someone who experienced it, he had a very great year. And I still have this hoodie in 2025. You guys have seen me wear it a couple of times with the album on the back. It just shows how much of an impact and how sentimental that year is to me. But yeah, that's been it from me, guys. Let me know some of your favorite rappers that you think had crazy years, and I might make a video on them as well. I think I'm making this a series, so I think I'm making this like part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. But yeah, let me know in the comments below your favorite version of rappers and who was just on absolute smoke for a whole year. Yeah, let me know in the comments below. But it's been your boy Jay to the Izzo, and I am out.